This is the Solid Signal podcast for the week of February 10th, 2020. Well, folks, for the last couple of weeks, I've been a really good boy, and I've been staying on topic, promoting the products and services at solidsignal.com. I still think that you should visit that site and see what's available, because after all, they do keep the lights on here at the Solid Signal podcast. But I've just been itching to go way off topic, and, well, last night kind of pushed me over the edge. Like some of you, I'm sure, I watched the Oscars. And like most of you, I would almost venture to guess all of you, I did not see Parasite, the film that ran away with practically every award that it was nominated for. And I'm sure it's a fine film. I'm sure it's a very good film, in fact. But there were a lot of very good films that were nominated for the Academy Awards this year, not just Best Picture, but throughout. And I can't help but thinking that this little film that nobody has seen is not really the best picture of the year. Well, maybe it is, but it really depends on what you mean by best. I think that there are a lot of reasons that people vote for best picture winners, and if you look at the list of best picture winners, especially for the last 25 years, you'll find that there are a lot of films on that list that really aren't remembered very well today, even though other films from that year are very well remembered today and are in fact very well regarded. A best picture win happens for a lot of reasons. It happens because of the subject matter. It happens because of the time period and what's going on, not just politically, but socially and emotionally. And I think that one film ends up coming around that really represents that moment in time, or at least that's what people think. And then as we look at that time period in history later, other films really seem to capture that pop culture moment better. And I think there were a number of excellent films this year. Some years, I gotta say, it's very hard for me to pick one that I like, but I think there were a couple this year that really kind of stood out and that didn't get as much attention as they possibly could for a lot of reasons. The Academy notoriously doesn't like science fiction films, doesn't like funny films, and they do not often reward these kinds of films with any sort of award, except for perhaps a technical one. And that's a shame, because the ability to make people laugh in a deep and meaningful way is just as important as the ability to make them cry. And some would argue that it's actually harder to make somebody laugh than it is to make somebody cry. But that's an argument for some other day. I guess what I'm saying is that the Oscars celebrates film in the abstract, and that's something that's always really kind of bothered me, because my personal understanding of art, the way that I really view art, is that art needs to be appreciated. Art is a two-way street, in other words. Art is a relationship, whether it's a painting or a piece of music, a movie, a video, a slide, or a sculpture, or whatever you would consider art. It's not just the fact that the thing exists in the abstract that makes it art. If art is never seen, if art is never appreciated or experienced, then it does not live up to its potential. And as a matter of fact, even though I wouldn't say that only mass market art is important, I definitely would not say that. I will say that there has to be a reasonable critical mass of people who experience art in order for it to be meaningful in society. Something can be extraordinarily artistic, but if it's not experienced by enough people, then it's just not going to move the needle. Okay, so now I'm going to make the opposite argument that by bringing a film like Parasite into the forefront, it could potentially be experienced by more people, and therefore its artistic value could be improved. But I'm not quite sure if that's what Best Picture is intended to do. Best Picture is intended to celebrate achievement, not potential achievement, and I don't want to even get into the difference between those two things, only to say that there were a lot of other films that really did achieve this year, that actually sparked a meaningful discussion about what should have been kind of really relevant topics in 2019. And I'm going to go out a little bit and point out the film Joker. And I guess I should mention that Joker is a Warner Brothers film, and Warner Brothers is part of the AT&T empire, as it were, and that Solid Signal, the parent of this podcast, is an AT&T dealer. So, okay, it's all out there on the table. But I remember a lot of discussion when Joker first came out about how important it was and how relevant it was to today. And there was a lot of controversy about whether it depicted male rage in a way that empowered men to be rage-filled or merely exposed the idea of male rage and what that meant. It was a film that really just dominated the discussion for a long time. And I tend to think that the combination of its intriguing subject matter and the fact that it relies on some established pop culture history are going to mean that it actually has a much longer life in the pop world, in the world of modern culture, than something like Parasite. I look back on past Oscar winners and I think to myself, well, that film didn't really move the needle. And even films that were extraordinarily celebrated in their day have been largely forgotten today, and you find them in back catalogs of streaming apps that are filled with commercials and very few other places other than for paid rental. Why? Because in the end, these films, although extraordinarily beautiful perhaps, did not create the social change that perhaps they had the opportunity to create. They did not do what art does, which is uplift the human experience. And so I would say, and this is just my opinion, that such films are in some ways more of a failure than a film that uplifts and defines the momentary experience of people. This is obviously a very unpopular opinion among intellectuals who would like to say that, art for art's sake and that something is beautiful whether or not it is experienced, and I would disagree. And I would say that art is something that requires that minimum, as I said, mass to actually make a difference in this world. That's my soapbox, friends, and feel free to agree with it or disagree with it. Feel free to leave comments, and I promise my bosses over at Solid Signal that I will get back to topic again real soon. But in the meantime, having watched the Oscars and its 3.5-hour length and surprise performances and all the things that made it kind of odd and wacky and memorable, the last thing that anyone will remember from the 2020 Oscars is who won.